come sit out on the porch with me at this beautiful, quiet Sunday morning. I got to share something because I think it's going to encourage some other people, or hopefully so. Um, this little pin on my shirt, it's got a story to tell. And my part of it begins Friday night. The Lord just kind of impressed upon me before conference, Friday night men's conference, or men's conference, to find one of my mama's pins. I didn't understand. And in the process of digging through and figuring out which one of my grandmother's pins I wanted to wear, I found my mama's wedding ring. Our niecey did, and I said, wear it too. And I was like, okay, God, that's kind of a little weird. I'm not usually one that puts sparkly things on or anything else, but I knew he had a reason for it. And Friday night, he illustrated something so beautiful with my mama's ring that I wasn't expecting. But nothing about mama's pin. See, with my mama's a recovery addict as well. My mom recovered. She fits in the category with a lot of us. We do recover. But also, I had prayed a very specific prayer with God with my mom, and I've shared this with some people. I was headed up to see her. Her boyfriend had called, and you got to get up here. Your mama is dying, and I don't know what to do. And I was angry, and I was mad because it was constant like this, in and out of rehabs, just making a fool out of my life. I was angry at her, and I didn't want her. And I told God, I said, kill her. I said, you take her now, or you get her sober long enough for me to have a mom, and I can forgive her. God answered that prayer. 10 years later, actually, almost to the day. And I had 6 months with my mama before he took her home. But she was sober. And for a little bit, I had a mom. Wasn't enough time. And God only gave me a taste of it, and he knew his purpose. He had given me my grandmother, and that's where, but he had given me a promise in that ring, or reiterated a promise with just an illustration with that ring. So I anticipated, God, what you got with the pen? You kept telling me to wear it Saturday morning conference. I was just I didn't wear it because I had the t-shirt on. But last night, he told me to put it back on. And I said, okay. This young man brought a message about legacy. And, this is a men's conference. I'm sitting in the back. I'm not expecting, I'm expecting for these men. And I've seen God answer some prayers that he's been having me pray over the summer. I'm nothing. But there's something that he said at the end of that message. And this has happened, emotions have stirred up when they begin to talk about their legacy. My arm's getting tired, so I'm going to move this. But he began to talk about his grandmother and how they were, or his granddaddy. He wasn't, unless you knew, you just didn't know. You didn't know who he was. He wasn't some famous missionary somebody had always talked about. He wasn't some preacher that everybody wants to go and hear. It was just, he was. But there was a legacy that was left. Because of what that man did. There are addicts. There's a church. There's a place of healing. There's a place of hope. There's a place for people like me to walk in the doors and feel the presence of God and life to be totally changed. And the Spirit hit me so heavy, I just began to weep and to begin to cry because he began to show me my grandmother. people know my grandmother and my granddaddy, James Earl Jones and Iris Claire Jones, Newton Jones. But to the world, they were just obscure names. My grandmother and my granddaddy made a commitment years and years and years ago. The day they got married, don't ever mention the divorce word, no matter how hard it gets. They went through a lot. But that woman was my greatest example of what a marriage is supposed to look like, what a wife looks like, what a mom looks like, what a intercessory prayer warrior. My mama didn't do a lot. But if it hadn't been for her and my granddaddy's prayers, I wouldn't be here right now. God's done showed me the body bags. He's done showed me the jail cells. He's done showed me all of the places. But because of her prayers, because of his prayers, I'm sitting right here today. And one of the things that I've always desired is to be just like my grandmama. If I could just have a small piece of the love that she gave, there was never condemnation in it. She truly loved like Jesus did. I don't know. Raising boys was probably hard. Raising my Aunt Bonnie, there's no telling. There's no telling the temper she probably had at times. There's no telling the things that she impacted people that she'll never realize she impacted. Her prayers are still being answered today. Even now, God is still honoring everything that she prayed. The enemy has tried to steal from me for a very long time that I have such a legacy, because I tarnished that. I let him tell me lies. And my daddy was telling me this the other day, that I've always had a very low self-esteem. And of course I had to ask him the hard question, because I wasn't nurtured. So it was hard for me to accept the kind of love my daddy had for me, or even my granddaddy, because to me he was a cold man. He was a stoic man, but he was a proud man, but he wasn't. He was a God-fearing man of God that worshiped God with all of his heart. And my grandmother and him did something right, because my daddy never steered from the word. And I'm not saying my daddy did something wrong. There was just a brokenness in my mama that wasn't healed. And there's a brokenness in me. But I got a God who said I can be healed, that I can change generations by my actions and by my surrender. And so I don't know. I know I'm not the only one out there that came from such a legacy, but I detoured. And that's what he was preaching on last night, was just because. Turn around. Stand up. You know, and I don't have a spouse right now. So it's my job. It's my job to raise these kids and to pour into these kids and to show these kids what a godly household looks like, what it looks like to live out my faith every day. And so I just encourage those that are like me, that have a strong legacy like that, that somewhere along the way the enemy twisted so many things up. And even though I did have a rough home life. I'm not going to sugarcoat that, but I wasn't rooted the way that I was. I couldn't accept God's love because I hadn't ever been loved. And that just, that's the reality of it. That's my reality. I allowed the enemy to twist up so much because I couldn't see my grandmother's love for a long time, or my granddaddy's, or my daddy's, or even what my mom tried to love, because the enemy came in like a flood when I was a wee little girl. But God reminded me that legacy was still mine, that those promises of the righteous, are still mine, that they're still my children's. And the enemy can't continue to lie to us. He put me where he put me, and he allowed me to go through the things that he went through so that I could have the reality that I belong to such a legacy, that I came from such a legacy. And I'm not the only one. It's time for us to stop running from the fact, or shying away from the fact, that we have such a legacy, and proudly own that legacy and move forward in what God has called us to do in those legacies. Thank y'all.